Now joined by Chris Burke, college baseball analyst for both ESPN and the SEC Network. Chris, man, thanks for stopping by. I appreciate this.
My pleasure. Let me get my eyes right.
That's right.
Yeah.
This is our version of Red Zone. So we've got 6-0 game for Pennsylvania and Michigan, 2-0 for Virginia and Maryland, and California and Nevada still waiting for our first breakthrough in this one. You're here on campus. Your son Jackson out of Christian Academy in Louisville is playing for Team Kentucky and the junior feature games.
Yeah.
What's the experience been like so far for you guys?
Pretty cool. Pretty cool. I've really tried to hold off on him doing too much, but he's about to be a freshman in high school, so we hopped in there with PBR this summer, and Jamie Tessoff and Chris Fuller were kind enough to think he was good enough to be a part of the team, so we're taking a few days off of football to be down here and being a part of it. And always good when your heart starts beating out of your chest and you get uncomfortable. He's not the showcasiest kid, so these are some things that are he's got to get better at, and he's got to, get bigger, stronger, faster as an athlete. He can play the game, but he's got to get bigger, stronger, faster. So as a dad, I think the value is him seeing that and then, being driven to keep trying to grow and develop to the part he can control of that, right? Some of that's God's timing and how you develop, but some of that is definitely your own work. So cool to see some of the top players in his age group.
So those guys are all down on the South Quad and the North Quad where all these games are going at. We've got largely 2026s out there. They're just days away from coaches being able to reach out to them and have their own commitments. When you kind of think back to the recruiting process for yourself and what you're seeing now, does it even seem like we're on the same planet?
No. I do. The only thing that I think that I like that's a little more of like my process was they can't call kids till they're 2026. Till they're August 1st of their junior year, which is the 2026 class. So that part, there weren't necessarily rules in place when I was coming through the process. It was just nobody did it. Nobody called you. And most of the time in that deal, nobody really would call you till, I think, actually there might have been rules. I can't remember, but in our deal, it was your junior summer that was your big summer. So the summer after your junior year. Now it's kind of the summer after your sophomore year. But there for a while, it got crazy where it was like, Jackson's age group this week would have been where all the coaches were.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because they were the newest group of uncommitted kids. So from that standpoint, it's a little more like the old days, which I think is very healthy. Let kids get to 16 years old and kind of find themselves as young men before you put them on the stage to be recruited, so to speak. But the portal and the NIL, that's like alien land.
Yeah,
that is and then yesterday to find out it's all full scholarships.
Yep.
Moving forward. So you got a hard cap at 34 people, but every school that chooses to opt in will be able to provide full scholarships. So it's kind of crazy for me to be here right now because these are all the guys I cover during the year with ESPN. And so I'm talking to them all yesterday and they're literally in the process of trying to wrap their brain around it and figure out their new plan moving forward.
So you mentioned the transfer portal. Obviously, it's changed everything. I had a coach equate it to me like this. He said, if I could take a guy who has seen 90 miles an hour every day, or I take a guy who's maybe seen it once or twice a week, there's no debate. I mean, obviously, it's changed everything for the high school player, but do you see a solution either from the player or the coach's side of it?
Well, the solution, I think would have to be a bigger picture college sports overhaul, which would be some sort of collective bargaining between the schools and the players, because right now the players have all the rights. They have all the freedom, all the rights. The only way the players and the courts have ruled that, right? So the only way the players would ever give up those rights is if they bargain with the schools for a give and take of why they would ever give those up. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, if the status quo continues, the players will have no incentive to give up all their rights. And so long as the courts view that to be constitutional, the players are going to continue to have freedom of movement and be able to make as much money as they want to off NIL. I don't see that changing. But if that ever does, I think it would be the only solution. Now, I will say, I don't think the coaches desire to redo their roster every year. I don't think they want that. So even though they're people are after their jobs and they need to win, so to do that, they'll do whatever they have to do to put the best team on the field the next year. I think in a perfect world, they would still develop, let's just say 80% of their roster and then go get 20% of their roster every year in the portal. Maybe some years less or more. But, I've been saying this a lot this week. Let's just take Tennessee, the national champions from last year. In their everyday lineup, they only had one portal hitter, and that was Billy Amick, the third baseman.
Yeah.
Only one portal hitter. The rest of those kids were homegrown. And then in their top 7 rotation, they had 3 portal pitchers, really 2 that made a huge impact, which was A.J. Causey and Nate Snead. So as prevalent as Tennessee is in the portal and as, strong as they are in the NIL game, they still had largely a homegrown team. And I think if you ask most of the coaches, they would love for that to be the case. Now, when you lose a bunch like they just lost, the only way to immediately replace that is to go out.
Yep.
So I think this year's team will have more of a portal presence than last year's team. So I guess all that to say, I don't feel like it's quite as portal heavy as it might feel. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I think you also had the team who won the national championship. One of their guys who made a major impact for them at one point ends up being the number 2 pick in the draft, playing for Wake Forest, and Chase Burke, who left them. Right. So I think it just kind of elevates it when you have players of that ilk kind of putting a
that leave.
Spotlight.
Yeah. Now I will say this cycle, it didn't feel like there were as many major college transfers. Last year we had Holman, Burns, Colby Shelton. Like, you had some of these monster Power 5 transfers, right? This year, most everybody kept their dudes, even through coaching changes. Like Ethan Petrie stayed at South Carolina, through a coaching. So some of Devin Taylor, star for Indiana, stays at Indiana. I mean, he might be a top 5 pick. Stayed at Indiana. So, the kids from Texas A&M went to the portal, but ultimately they stayed. So that part of it feels like we're seeing less of the stars move around this year. I don't know if that's a trend or just a one-off.
So you obviously a first-round draft pick yourself, 10th overall in 2001 by the Astros out of Tennessee. Vols back on top of the college baseball universe. We were just talking about that. Tony Vitello, arguably the most recognizable face in college baseball. I had an Ohio player, one of the top players in the state, I'll go unnamed here, told me he was a little starstruck when he saw him. But as both an alum and somebody who had a front seat for that, what was it like for you to watch Tennessee be back on top?
I've been zooming out from my role as broadcaster to be able to fully appreciate everything that they did, and just how, if I just take my broadcaster hat off and just think of it as a former player, how proud I am of what Tony's built, and those players who they just came up clutch so many times. So a special group of coaches and players, and, not everybody caps off a run the way that they did, but you look at the last 4 years, I mean, that program is just trending, and then boom, they closed it out. So, just proud of them for that. I think as a broadcaster, if I'm just looking more in an unbiased lens, their ability to rework that roster, develop from within, but then add the right portal pieces, that's why they're at the top of the industry right now. And I think they get 4 people here right now.
Wow.
So I think, like, if you're trying to chase them, there's a commitment level that, again, do they have NIL? Yes. Are they active in the portal? Yes. But here is basically a high school 16U focused event this week, and they got 4 people here sitting on every game. So I think that says a lot about why they've been so successful.
I mean, obviously, well and tied to the SEC. I saw Baseball America's way too early top 25 had 11 SEC teams in the top 25. What's that been like for you two to watch this conference just kind of, just put its foot down as the national power?
Yeah. It was good to see the ACC have 4 in Omaha, too. I mean, the rest of the country besides ACC and SEC was probably like, well, what's good about that? But I just, like, there was a time when you looked at the regionals, the way they came out, and you said, if this could break to where there's 6 SEC teams. And as much as I love the SEC, played in the SEC, cover the SEC, think the world of the SEC, like, you do have to have a global picture of the sport, and you go, is it? Would it be good for there to be, what I would say is I think a rising tide raises all ships, and the investment level of the Southeastern Conference is causing every athletic department in the country to go, are we in or are we out? And I think the thing to look for as just a college baseball fan, is the Big Ten going to jump in? They've got these West Coast brands.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
You've got as much money as the SEC contractually from, their baseball programs don't produce the same amount of money, but from a revenue standpoint through football and TV contracts, the Big Ten hands out as much money to their member schools as the SEC does to their member schools. So it's are you going to go 34 scholarships? Are y'all going to invest in coaching staffs, invest in facilities, and invest in NIL to where, if I was looking the Big Ten right in the eye, I'd be like, come on, let's go. Jump in the college baseball world. I know the weather's not great, but, by the time you get to April, it's fine. It's okay. So I think it would make our sport better if some of those Big Ten brands and especially some of those West Coast brands that are joining the Big Ten got back in the mix.
Well, as a guy who relocated from Ohio down here to Georgia a couple decades ago, you get used to the weather, right?
Yeah.
You got to enjoy all this. Obviously, a big moment, Todd Helton in the Baseball Hall of Fame. I know that was something that you had to really enjoy that.
Yeah. Speaking of the SEC, how about just the second player ever from the Southeastern Conference to get in the Hall of Fame? That always blows people's mind.
Unbelievable, yeah.
Frank Thomas and Todd Helton.
Wow.
So, something tells me 30 years from now that's going to look different.
Yes.
Maybe already start making Paul Skeens' bust for the Hall of Fame. But it's pretty remarkable, I think, as a Tennessee guy, especially one that followed him from an era standpoint at Tennessee. Just very proud of the way he's put Tennessee baseball on the map by being only the second SEC player ever to make it. So, all-time legendary player who now gets to be a part of the legends forever.
Well, Chris, listen, the baseball journey for you and your son Jackson just getting started, and thank you for making LakePoint Sports and the prep baseball, this event, the future games, a part of it. Happy to have you here, and thank you so much for the time.
My pleasure. Thanks for making it so big. I'm going to tell my family to tune in.